called Henry and Moor by Bioni Samp. Castleford, Yorkshire, mining town, coal, River Aire, Welldale, Glassoughton, Fryston, Ledston Lock, Ollerton Bywater, Half Acres, Weldon Lane, Carlton Street, Hickson's, Lums, Henry Moor. I had a dream about Henry Moor, that somebody had rammed his sculpture, crashing into it while joyriding. And it hadn't budged, the sculpture. It was now inside the centre of the car, squashing the seats out of the way, still on its plinth. Everywhere round Castleford was a slag heap, mountains made from unusable coal dust. I went to visit the pit. Henry Moor, right famous he is, him. When we got there, lights flickered on and off, and we saw how really black it was, damp, cold and wet, the sound of water dripping everywhere, muffled drilling noises miles away at the coal face, tubs of coal riding on rails, bumping and jostling their way along the network of narrow tracks. Coal dust you could see by the lamp on the front of your hard hat. Does he, Henry Moor, still live in Cass? Henry Moor is a bore. I also learned Henry Moor went down the pit, drawing miners as they worked. There seemed to be a lot of controversy about his work, what it meant. Oh, so that's the smell of wet bronze. Milk snatcher. Coal. Henry Moor is a bore. Plenty needed a job in Cass now the mines were shut in. Coal. 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 I'd heard Henry Moor was influenced by being inside caves. I'd seen these caves. Several of them were bricked up around Queen's Park and the quarries in Glassoughton and the Potteries Quarry. When I saw these caves, there was soft edge leading into the hillside with trees and bushes on top. I'd also heard a warning tale when I was young to stay out of these caves and not to make burrows into the soft, crumbly sandstone in all these places, or I'd end up dead like some children whose cave burrow had collapsed in on top of them. Coal fire smog from the narrow rows of streets. Everywhere around Castleford was a slag heap, mountains made from unusable coal dust. But where are the new jobs? I remember my mother telling me that Henry Moor's uncle had taught at the same school she had attended, and that was my first feeling of being connected to the artist. I was into art and metalwork at school, always drawing, and I enjoyed making things in metal. A toasting fork for a coal fire would come in handy in the cold winters, a copper ashtray for my grandfather who worked at the same colliery as Henry Moor's father. I learned welding at the Tech once a week, the Mining and Technical College. There seemed to be a lot of controversy about his work, what it meant. Later in high school, we were asked to do a presentation on an artist we admired. I forget who I chose, but one girl in my class chose Henry Moor. She showed examples of his wartime drawings in the London Underground and photographs of his sculpture. I liked the sculptures and the idea that they could be outside and accessible to everyone. By then I was leaving Cass by bus, travelling 9 miles over Heath Common. By 16 I got myself a scholarship to go and study art at Wakefield College for 2 years. Henry Moor also got a scholarship to study art in Leeds. It was here I learnt more about Moor from Jan, my art history tutor. At last something interesting by him. Nice strings, a bit like a harp, a cage where a bird could fly out of it. Bit like a pram. Presumably the bird would return so it could play a riff by pecking the strings. Could it be amplified? Thatcher, Thatcher, milk snatcher. Maggie, Maggie, Maggie. Out, out, out. Save the miners. One day during the strike, the water was all turned fluoride. Later I learned that's to dumb people down in areas where there's unrest. In the mid-80s, I saw some Henry Moors, ignoring them for more interesting stuff. Coal fire smog from the narrow rows of streets. Thatcher, Thatcher, milk snatcher, Maggie, 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 out, out, out. Coal, Henry Moore's uncle. Coal, stone sculpture, and a Henry Moore plaque on the floor. More of the same stuff. Thatcher, Thatcher. More of the same. Yorkshire, mining town. Coal, drawing miners as they worked. More of the same stuff, reclining. Coal. What kind of work would he have produced if it stayed in Castleford? A new leisure and shopping centre. A fantastic new bridge over the Aire. Oh, Henry Moore is given to Castleford. More of the same stuff. Muffled drilling noises. A new leisure and shopping centre. By this time, Henry Moore was selling $3 million public art pieces. More of the same stuff, reclining. Coal, milk snatcher. I now see the Cow and Calf Rocks in Ilkley as the ultimate Henry Moore. Muffled drilling noises. I think I heard the name Henry Moore when I was a very young child. What it meant. That there were poisonous gases about, foam in nightmare colours, and these special mats that collected coal dust. Damp, cold, wet. Henry Moore. There was also an electronic canary which told with a beat that there was poisonous gas about. Foam in nightmare colours. What did it mean? That Henry Moore and I grew up in the same town. Some days all foam in nightmare colours covering the water. Save the miners. He could have drawn the miners on the picket lines like he'd drawn them earlier when they were working. He could have drawn the miners. Milk snatcher, what he meant. What if Henry Moore still had a sculpture studio in Castleford? Rents were cheap. What kind of work would he have produced? Fish, dead, polluted by chemical factories and general industrial use. Dead rats, a new leisure and shopping centre. Dead rats, a fantastic new bridge over the Aire. Henry Moore. On a visit to the old Tate, as I still call it, in the mid-80s, I saw some Henry Moores, ignoring them for more interesting stuff. Henry Moore is a bore. Dead rats seemed very interesting then and super modern and industrial in a very 80s way. It seemed there was a lot of controversy about his work and what it meant. I'd almost forgotten him for a few years after he died in 86. Until I saw Gormley, Kapoor, Goldsworthy and newcomers Damien Hirst, etc. I started to ask, hey, were any of these influenced by him? Coal. 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 Foam in nightmare colours. Now Castleford's been cleaned up and modernised. Lots of slag heaps of coal dust have been grassed over. It looks slightly less grey, but town's lost some of its old charm and a lot of its jobs as well. It's got a new shopping and leisure centre, a fantastic new bridge over the Aire. But people don't seem to be as well off since all the mining collieries went. The miners' wages generated a lot of wealth in the area over several generations. Now, as well as the mines, the potteries, the glassworks, the chemical plant have all gone too. There's a new Castleford College to replace the old mining and technical college, a new leisure centre, a fantastic new bridge over the Aire. Maggie, 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 out, out, out. It's still all Labour voters, and always will be. The Tories are just laughed at round here. Fuck off back to Eton, you posh git. Coal fire smog from the narrow rows of streets. I even watched on the way to school as the new Henry Moore sculpture was installed outside the fancy civic centre, which was of modern design. Standing in the rain, I saw a workman fix the bronze to the plinth. What was it? Oh, a Henry Moore is given to Castleford. A lady reclining, dark, abstracted. And not that big, really. I bet he don't think much of Castleford. Oh, so that's the smell of wet bronze. Might even get stolen and melted down, but bronze is not worth as much as gold. People that round here that steal anything if it's not bolted down like this sculpture's just been. Henry Moore, right famous he is, yeah. He was born right in this square. It's now called Henry Moore Square, and it's been arted up by Yorkshire Arts with a new but already soot-stained stone sculpture and a Henry Moore plaque on the floor. Coal, River Aire, mining town, Welldale, Castle Glassoughton. Passing by to see Henry Moore's West Wing relief sculpture on the Time Life building. Fryston, Lettston Look, Ollerton Bywater, Airedale. I now see the Cow and Calf Rocks in Ilkley as the ultimate Henry Moore, pure abstraction which he must have been working towards all the time. There's always more to Henry Moore. Yorkshire, mining town, coal, River Aire, Whitwood, Cutsite, Potteries, Carlton Street, Lock Lane, Lettston Look, Fryston, Henry Moore.